Today's class is Pay Employees, getting started with QuickBooks Payroll. So I'm going to show you the process of getting payroll set up from the very beginning and setting up an employee, running payroll. We're going to look at paying payroll taxes and all of that. So we're going to first talk about the payroll subscriptions. We're going to look at the options that you have and how to choose which one is going to be the best choice for you and your business. Then we're going to go through setting up payroll from the very beginning. There's some important information that we need to get in about our business and about our employees before we can actually run payroll. And we're also going to look at how to pay employees. You're going to see that process. Once you have payroll set up, running payroll is very easy with QuickBooks. We're also going to look at how to pay and file your payroll taxes. And we'll also go through paying non-tax liabilities. And if we have time, I'll try to show you some reports and things like that towards the end there. But that is our agenda for today. So let's start off by going into QuickBooks. But actually, before I do that, I just want to go through a quick list of things that you'll want to have on hand when you're getting ready to set up payroll. So you'll want to have W-4s filled out by your employees. You're going to want to make sure you have any year-to-date payroll information if you're switching from another payroll service to QuickBooks Online payroll. Any important numbers for your business, like your EIN, any state numbers that are important. Your state unemployment insurance rate is also important. That is a rate that is specific to your business. QuickBooks can't guess what that should be for you, so you're going to have that on hand. And if you're going to be setting up direct deposit for any of your employees, you're going to want to have their account numbers and their routing numbers ready to go so you can get that set up. So let's go ahead, and now we are going to go into QuickBooks and start looking at payroll. Okay, so here we are this is an empty QuickBooks company. There are no other transactions in here. We're just going to be focusing on payroll. So it's going to be, there's going to be a lot of empty stuff on my dashboard, especially because I don't have anything else in here. So to get started, we're going to go over to the left navigation bar, and I'm going to click on Workers, Employees. There we go. Okay, so first we need to choose our payroll plan. So I'm going to click Get Started right here. And when we first go to that page and we click that Get Started button, we're going to be presented with the two payroll service plans. So first is QuickBooks Self-Service Payroll. This is basically where you do the work. You run the payroll, you enter the information, all of that. You have direct control over the payroll process. Full service payroll is where you have kind of a support person that can work with you, making sure that everything gets done on time. Your taxes are going to be filed for you with the full service payroll plan, and the W-2s are taken care of for you, all of that, which is really nice. So this is just a bit of information about the services. If you scroll down, you're going to see a little bit more, features to kind of fill out the information on what's available with each of these plans. So you do get more with the full service payroll, but the pricing for each of these plans is going to be pretty different, because with full service, you have a lot more done for you. You have the guarantee that everything is going to be correct as far as your payroll taxes. Self-service payroll doesn't have as much features, so it is a little bit less per month. So just keep that in mind when you're choosing your plan. You can see the rates right here. These are the rates today for the plan. They have specials all the time going on for these plans. So I'm going to actually scroll up, and I'm going to go with the self-service payroll for today's class. You get to see more of the payroll process this way. Okay, so I'm going to click on that. And what's going to happen next, QuickBooks is going to have to ask us information about our business, and we're going to have to fill it in. So it's loading here. All right, so I'm going to click Get Started. And the first question we're asked is, have you paid employees in 2019? This is a really important question because this is where you're telling QuickBooks if you need to enter historical payroll information for your employees. If you don't answer yes right here, you don't have a chance later on to answer yes to this question. So if you do have payroll information you need to get into QuickBooks, you should answer yes right here. So I'm going to go ahead and answer yes just so you can see what this looks like when you fill out historical payroll information. And we'll click next. Next, we're going to set when our next payday is. So I'm going to actually set my next payday for Friday. And I'll click done. Okay, so we have a to-do list now. So we've already, answered some very basic questions. So now we're ready for step 2, which is entering our company information, our address, all of this. I'm going to click Let's Go. Okay, so first we need the business name and our business address. Now, if you filled this information out when you set up your company, this is going to be filled in for you. You just click Next. I didn't do that though, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Dallas, state is going to be Texas. And then I'll click Next. Okay, so the payroll contact, I need to put in a phone number here. There we go. And it's getting the email address from the company information. I'm going to click Done. All right, so that's step 2. Next, we need to tell QuickBooks about our team. What this means is basically we're going to start setting up our employee information. That's all that is. So I'm going to click Let's Go. Also, I do want to show you this because this is really nice. When you're setting up payroll for the first time, it can feel kind of intimidating to make sure that you have all the right information in place. So if you are getting started for the first time, it's your first experience with any kind of payroll, there is a checklist over here. If you click View right here, QuickBooks will give you a checklist of information that you need when you start setting up payroll. So let's go through and set up an employee. So I'm going to click Add an Employee. Okay, so we have several pieces of information we need to fill in here. So we're going to start off with the easiest one, which is the name of our employee. So do Jeremy Brewer. Then we'll put in his email address. And what this is going to do, it's actually going to make it really easy for our employee to view their pay stubs online, see their W-2 online through a service that QuickBooks offers called QuickBooks Workforce, I believe is the new name for it. We put in his email address, we can check this box to invite him to that service, which is really nice. Next, we need to fill in our employee's withholdings. So basically enter his W-4 information. So if you have questions about what a W-4 form is, you can click this link right here. Basically, it's a form that your employees fill out with their social security number, address, and any withholdings that you need to be aware of. So I'm going to click Enter W-4 form. We need to enter the rest of our employees' information. So there's his social security number. Next, we need to enter his address. South Street, also in Dallas. There we go. Jeremy is single, told a number of allowances. This has a lot to do with, if he has dependents or anything like that, or special tax situations. We're going to put 1 right here. Next, if there's any additional amount that he wants withheld from his paycheck, we can put that here. He does not want any extra withheld from his paycheck. Next, we have tax exemptions down here at the very bottom. This is where you can mark if the employee is exempt from any of these taxes. Most commonly, employees are not going to be exempt from any of these, much less all of them. If you're a nonprofit, it's going to be a little bit different in then even then, depending on the employee, it's going to be a little bit different. But our employee is not exempt from any of those taxes. So I'm going to click done. We've filled out his W-4 information. All right, next, number 3, how often do you pay Jeremy? So this is basically where we tell QuickBooks when we run payroll. So I'm going to click create pay schedule, and there's even a link right here. What is a pay schedule? So QuickBooks really helps hold your hand through this process with all these help links throughout the payroll setup. So I'm going to click create pay schedule. Okay, so how often do you pay Jeremy? We have several choices here: every other week, every week, twice a month, or every month, which is basically just a monthly pay schedule. So I'm going to select twice a month because that's going to show an option where I can set up a custom schedule. So I'll click this custom schedule link, and I'm going to set the first payday of the month. So the first payday is going to be the 15th. Next, when does the pay period end? So if you wanted the pay period to end a couple days before the payday, then you could set that here. So let's say I want the pay period to end on the 13th. I can choose that right here of the same month. Next, we need to set the second payday of the month. So I'm going to click this drop down. I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to choose end of the month. We'll say that the second payday is whatever the last day of the month is. Now, because the last day of the month could vary depending on the month, some months have 30 days, some have 31, and February has 28 or 29, depending on the year. So we can't set an exact date for the pay period to end, but we can have QuickBooks calculate that for us with this second option here to end the pay period a certain number of days before payday. So for example, if I put 2 in this field, QuickBooks is going to know that 2 days before the last day of the month is the end of the pay period. And that's how it's going to know to remind us to run payroll. So that's how we set that there. Next, we can enter a name for the pay schedule. Twice a month is fine, but you could change this to whatever you want it to be. We also have an option here to use this schedule for employees we add after Jeremy. So if we were setting up several other employees, then QuickBooks would automatically assign this specific payroll schedule to those employees as well. So that basically takes care of an employee setup step for us with this checkbox. I'm not going to check that. I'm only setting up one employee today. So I'm just going to click done. Now you can have multiple pay schedules if you want. You don't have to have every employee on the same pay schedule. Okay, so we've set up the pay schedule. Next, how much do you pay Jeremy? I'm sure this is something that Jeremy is very concerned about, how much he's going to get paid. So we can choose a few options here. We have hourly, salary, and then commission only. So if I set hourly here, for example, I can enter how much he gets paid per hour, let's say $20 an hour. But this isn't the only way that we pay Jeremy. We have other things that we pay him for, like overtime. We need to also think about sick and vacation time for him. So I'm going to click add additional pay types. Okay, so QuickBooks has his hourly rate right here that I set on the previous screen. I could add another hourly rate here as well. Maybe he gets paid different hourly rate depending on the work that he does. Maybe he gets $22 an hour for doing gardening work versus $20 an hour for doing pest control. This is where you can set up another hourly rate if we needed to. There are other pay options here as well. So we have overtime pay. Let's say he gets overtime pay, so we'll check that off. Then there is, these other options, double overtime. I'm going to skip over these for right now. There's also holiday pay. So holiday pay is basically where you pay employees for not working on government holidays. For example, Memorial Day, Labor Day, 4th of July. But that's where you can have that turned on so that when you're running payroll, you can go ahead and put hours in under holiday pay, even though they're not working that day. There's bonus. If you ever pay employees a bonus, you want to turn this on. You can always hide this field when you're running payroll. I'll show you where to do that. So I'll just turn this on for right now, just so you can see that. Next, we have all these options for time off. So paid time off, unpaid time off, sick pay, and vacation pay. So unpaid time off, basically where somebody takes time off and you're not going to pay them during that time. Paid time off, if this is what you call the time off that you give to employees to use for either sick days or vacation days, you might want to choose paid time off here. If you have separate, buckets, so to speak, of hours for employees to use for sick and a separate bucket for vacation pay, then you can set up both of these here. I'm just going to set up a single paid time off right here because we just have one bucket of hours for our employee. Now, me setting up the paid time off, this setup is the exact same as setting up sick pay or vacation pay. Looks exactly the same. The only difference is in what it's called. Okay, so when are these hours accrued? At the beginning of the year. So let's say he earns 80 hours per year. We could set a maximum number of hours in this field. So let's say we're going to set the maximum number of hours allowed at 80. So what this means is when we get to the, let's say December 31st, Jeremy has 20 hours left over from his paid time off that he hasn't used. When we roll over to January 1st, this maximum right here is going to ensure that Jeremy never has more than 80 hours to use. So he can't stockpile hours. This is basically a use it or lose it time off policy right here. I'm going to click OK. Next, we're going to put in how many hours he has right now. We'll just say he has 80. Now, there's even more ways to pay employees that we can choose from. So if I click this option right down here, and scroll down and we see several other choices we can choose. So allowances, reimbursements. If you pay employees back for expenses they incur, you set up reimbursement. Cash tips, paycheck tips, all these different kinds of ways to pay. You can even set up a custom way to pay employees right down here. I don't need any of these for our employees, so I'm just going to click done. Okay, so scrolling down, next, we need to set up our employees' deductions. So I'm going to click Add Deductions. So I'm going to set up a health insurance deduction. Setting up one type of deduction is the same process as most other deductions. So I'm just going to set up the one, but if you want to set up another type of deduction, the setup process is going to be generally the same. So this is going to be a deduction or contribution. The type is going to be health insurance, but you see we have several other options here as well. Next, the type of insurance, if I click this drop down, is medical insurance. Okay, so next we need to fill in the provider. So this is going to be Good Health Insurance. You know it's good because good is in the name. Next, we need to fill in how much is withheld from the employee's paycheck, how much is deducted from his paycheck. So we could put in a dollar amount or a percentage amount. Percentage of gross pay is usually the type of deduction that you would do for a retirement plan or something like that. But I'm going to choose dollar amount right here for this one since it's health insurance. The deduction is going to be $50 per pay period. We could set a maximum here as well. Company paid contribution, if there's any portion of this that is paid by the company, then you could put this right here. So say maybe dollar amount, we contribute $20 for the employee. Next, we need to choose if this is a taxable or a pre-tax insurance plan. This is a very important selection. If you're not sure which one of these you should choose, definitely talk to your plan provider. Make sure that you make the correct selection here. If you make the wrong selection, this could have some tax ramifications that you definitely don't want to be faced with. So double check that you make the right selection here. I'm setting up a taxable insurance premium. I'm going to click OK. All right, so that's setting up a deduction. Again, setting up any other kind of deduction is very much the same. Just click add a new deduction to go through the process for anything else you need to set up. Next, how do you want to pay Jeremy? So Jeremy would like to get paid as quickly as possible. And the fastest option there is direct deposit. Direct deposit is included with your payroll plan. Intuit's not going to charge you any extra for using direct deposit. Your bank might charge a fee for the direct deposit, but there's not going to be any extra fees from Intuit. We have a few options here for direct deposit. So direct deposit to 2 accounts, direct deposit with the balance as a check, or a paper check. I'm going to choose paper check in this situation because I do not have any bank account numbers or routing numbers, and I don't want to set up direct deposit for a pretend company. But the process of paying direct deposit employees is very similar to the process of paying employees that receive paper checks. It's just the difference is, QuickBooks tells you, okay, direct deposit has been sent to these employees, and here you can print these employees' checks, and you'll see that in a little bit here. Next, we have some information to enter here about how much we paid our employees so far this year. So I'm seeing this option because I told QuickBooks I had historical payroll to enter. And I just want to show you what this looks like. I'm not actually going to fill in any numbers. So how much have you already paid Jeremy in 2019? So did we pay him anytime between January and March? We say yes. Then QuickBooks is going to show us some fields here that are going to be where we fill in what we've paid him for each of these line items. This information is good to get into QuickBooks because it's going to make sure that taxes are calculated correctly for your employees, and all this information is going to be included on your employee's W-2. Now, something to keep note here, when you fill in values in these fields and click continue and save all this information, none of your account balances are going to be affected. It's really just going to make sure that you have all the information on the employee's record. So it's not going to impact liability balances or anything like that. It's just getting this historical information into QuickBooks. And there are several links on this page. If you have questions about this, why is this important? What do I need? All of this. Now, since we are past the second quarter of the year, we have another question here. Did you pay Jeremy on or after April 1st? So yes or no. I'm going to say no right here. But if I did say yes, we would see fields to fill in as well. I'm just going to check no for both of these questions because I don't have anything to enter. And then I'll click continue. But I did want to show you where you fill in that historical information. Okay, so scrolling down, that's everything for our employee. Double check, do a visual check to make sure you've added everything you need to. Click this pencil icon next to each section, make sure that everything is in the way it should be. Then just click done. And now we have an employee. He's all set up. And we could continue adding employees right here if we need to. I'm going to click continue. And this is just because I answered yes that I had historical payroll, but I didn't enter anything. So I'm just going to click no. And QuickBooks actually drops us into the payroll cycle, which we're not ready for just yet. So I want to close out of that because we still need to take care of our payroll taxes. So over here to the left, I'm going to click payroll tax. So go over taxes, payroll tax. And I'm going to click continue to tax setup. So make sure you have W-4 forms, federal and state tax notices, all of that together so you can fill in this information. Okay, so we need to enter a few pieces of info for our employee. So 5/12/80, when he was born, his hire date, let's say 6/1/19. There we go. And if we need to check his W-4 information, we could do that here. I'm going to close out of that, and then I'll click continue. Ooh. 19, there we go. Okay, so business information. So the business name that we use when filing tax forms, if we need to, change the address where we file our tax forms from. We can uncheck this box and enter the actual address that it should be. It's pulling this address from my company information. When will you first be running payroll? So I'm going to say before July 1st. And then did you hire your first employee within the last 6 months? If I choose yes here, we also get another question. Did you buy your business from a previous owner? And what these questions are really doing, it's making sure that the options that are selected for your business are accurate based on where your company is as far as payroll. So let's say no, we didn't buy our business. Next, there's a thing about workers' comp. If you want to get a quote for workers' comp insurance, you can click yes right here to get a quote if you don't already have workers' comp insurance. I'm just going to choose no right here and continue. So because of those answers to the questions that I selected, QuickBooks is assigning us the Federal Tax Form 941 and the Federal Deposit Schedule for monthly. We can change this though. This is just something that QuickBooks is assuming based on how we answered those questions. I'm just going to click OK. Okay, so next we need to fill in our federal tax information, starting with our EIN. So I'm going to put, there we go, our EIN. Oops, there we go, yes. And I'm going to uncheck that box. Next, which payroll tax form? QuickBooks already selected one for us, but we could click this drop down and choose another one, the 944. Next, how often does the IRS require you to pay federal taxes? So this is how often you have to pay those or send in those payments. QuickBooks chose on the 15th of each month, but we could choose another option here if that's appropriate for our business. Next, is your business a 501c3 nonprofit? We are not. So I'm going to click continue. Now we need state tax details that we need to fill in. The questions that you're going to answer here might vary based on your state, but I just want to make you aware that you might see different questions here. Let's see, Texas account number. I'm just going to select no right here. State unemployment rate. I said at the beginning that this is a rate QuickBooks will not know for you. You're going to have to get that for your business because it depends on how many employees worked for you in the past, how many were fired, and so on. So I'm going to set this to 2%. Next, employment training investment assessment rate, 0.10. Then obligation assessment, you only have 0 there. I'm going to click save. Next, tell us how you want to pay your taxes. So this is really nice. With QuickBooks Payroll, you have the option to e-pay and e-file your payroll taxes. This makes that process so easy to take care of those payroll taxes. So it's just a couple of clicks and your taxes are taken care of. Submit them right through QuickBooks. However, because I am setting up kind of a fake company here, I'm going to choose manually at this step because the IRS doesn't like you to pretend to be a business and pretend to e-pay taxes. So I'm going to choose manually, but I will be able to show you where you can e-pay and e-file those taxes. It's in the same location. It's just, the difference is just the name of a button, really. I'm going to click next. And we are all set. We've entered our tax info. So I'll click done. And now we have the Payroll Tax Center. I'm going to go through this Payroll Tax Center a little bit once we have run payroll. So what I actually want to do is go ahead and go over to workers, because we're going to spend some time in that Payroll Tax Center in a little bit. We're ready to roll. We're ready to run payroll. So you can actually start here with running payroll, or you can go over to employees and click run payroll right here. It's the same thing. So we can see we have the one employee right here. So let's go ahead and pay him. So I'm going to click run payroll. Okay, so I just want to point out some stuff here. So the bank account, this is where we are paying our employees from. You can set a default bank account that'll show up in this drop down, or that'll be selected by default. I'll show you where to do that here in a little bit after we run payroll. The pay period that we're paying our employee for is right here. If we needed to run payroll for another pay period, we could select that. Here's the pay date. Here's our employee. His name is selected. His pay method, right here we see a check symbol because he's getting a paper check. Regular pay hours. This is where you can put in the hours for your employee. Now, if you are entering timesheets in QuickBooks, these hours will come over to this payroll window. Actually, I want to show that. So I'm going to go to the Create menu, and I'm going to choose Single Time Activity. So we're just going to enter a few hours here, make sure it's going to be within the payroll period. There we go. And pay item is regular pay. Trying to add a customer here. There we go. All right. So the time, this is going to be, say, 8 hours right here. So that's our time activity. So I'm going to click Save and Close. Okay, so when I'm in the payroll window, I'm going to click Run Payroll again. Those hours are now in the hours field. So that's kind of cool. If you're entering that time in QuickBooks, it will come over to payroll. Just wanted to show you that. So let's say I'm going to put 40 regular hours, and then overtime hours. Let's say he got 5 overtime hours. If he took any paid time off, we'd enter the number of hours off that he took. Bonus, here's that bonus field that I added. So this is where you can enter any bonus amount. If you're issuing a bonus on this check or a regular separate bonus check, you could do that. And I told you you could hide these columns. So there is a settings menu right here. If you click on that, we're going to be able to edit the columns. So if we're not paying overtime or we don't use this payroll feature very often, we could hide it. I'm just going to uncheck bonus. That way it doesn't show up here, but I can always add it back if we are creating bonus checks. So that's kind of nice. Make this window a little bit easier to read. All right, so that is all of this. I actually want to go ahead and click on this little edit icon next to the employee's paycheck because I want to show you, or his pay information. I'm going to show you kind of a breakdown that QuickBooks has for us. So here we see regular pay and how much he's getting paid for regular pay, how much he gets for overtime pay, which is time and a half, based on his hourly rate, any paid time off hours he's using. We can see a breakdown of employee taxes right here, employee deductions. We see that health insurance deduction, employer taxes right here, and then any company paid contributions right here. So for that health insurance premium, we contribute $20 per pay period. So it's a lot of, good information. If you want to look at that, this is where you can access that. Just click the icon next to the employee's name. There's also a checkbox here I want to point out. It says accrue vacation and sick leave for this paycheck. So this is an important checkbox to be aware of because most paychecks that you issue to employees should be, should accrue vacation and sick leave for the employee. But some situations you don't want to do that. A lot of companies don't allow employees to accrue vacation on bonus checks. If you're creating a termination check or a final check for somebody, you don't want them to accrue vacation on that. So you could uncheck this box if that is the case. I'm going to click OK. All right, so that's everything. I'm going to go ahead and click Preview Payroll. So this is where we can kind of see what's going on. We can see a breakdown on this page, so we can see total net pay that our employee is getting, the employee taxes and deductions right here, and then the employer taxes and deductions that are coming out of our pocket, basically as far as how much it costs us to pay this employee. You can see we have one paper check for this amount for our employee, Jeremy. All this looks great. You could click the icon right here to the very far right to see that breakdown again if you wanted to. I'm going to click Submit Payroll. All right, got it. Payroll is all set. Now, if I have direct deposit employees, then I'm not going to see a check number field right here because I have an employee that gets a paper check and it's asking for a check number if I'm printing the check right now. We could also click Print Pay Stubs to go print those, but you don't have to print them right this minute, and I'll show you where you can print those later if you want to. Now down here at the bottom, there's an option to view payroll reports. So I'm going to click on this because I want to show you this really cool feature. QuickBooks allows you to export several payroll reports directly to Excel so that you can view all that information in one place. And here are the reports. They're going to be exported. I'll show you where you can set this here in just a little bit. So I'm going to click Export to Excel. And what this is, it's basically an entire workbook of payroll reports in Excel on separate tabs. Should be able to open this. There we go. Okay, so each report is on its own tab. So we have payroll details right here. We can see the detailed breakdown of the payroll we just ran. Tax payments, if we issued any within this period. Total cost of payroll right here. The payroll summary. And then any deductions and contributions right there. So really nice to be able to get all that information in one place. You could save this, email it to anybody who needs to see this information, maybe your accountant. But you can get this information on separate reports within QuickBooks, but it is nice to be able to have all of this in one place, if you ask me. All right, so we're gonna go back into QuickBooks here, and I'm gonna just click OK right here. Okay, I'm going to click Finish Payroll, Finish Payroll again, and we're done. That is paying employees. So again, if we had employees that were getting paid with direct deposit, the payroll would be completed. Their money is on the way, basically. But that's the payroll process. That's how easy it is to create paychecks. Now, if you wanted to print paychecks later on after you run payroll, then you can do so from the paycheck list report. And QuickBooks actually gives you a link to it right here in the payroll screen, which is really nice. So if you click paycheck list right up here, we can see that check that we just created for our employee. We could check it off and then we could print it, edit it, or delete it if we created it in error. But this is where you can print those payroll checks. And this paycheck list is actually a report as well that you can access from the reports page. So that's paying employees. Now let's look at paying payroll taxes, because that is an important part of payroll, taking care of those taxes on time. So I'm going to go to Taxes, Payroll Tax. And I do want to go ahead and show you some things in this window now that we're focusing on payroll taxes, because there's a lot of important stuff here that is not immediately apparent when you first come to this page. So if you have taxes that are due, you're going to click Pay Taxes right here, and they're going to be listed, right above this button. I don't have any right now, but I'll still show you kind of the process of doing that. If you want to go ahead and sign up for e-file and e-pay later on, you can do so from this link right here. It's basically, if you click on that, you're going to see the same page that we saw earlier during the payroll setup. If you wanted to register for that later, you could. If you click Edit Your Tax Setup, we're actually going to be taken to some payroll settings. So the tax setup overview, if we needed to change any of our tax information, this is where we could do that. If we go to overview, then it's going to have a lot of links for preferences and settings and things like that, taxes, all this kind of stuff. Pay policies, these are your pay schedules and your time off policies, vacation, sick time, paid time off. Tax setup, again, what we get to when we first click on this. Deductions, this is where we see our deductions all listed out. Then we have preferences. Preferences is where we're going to get into some of the nitty-gritty of running payroll or keeping track of payroll in QuickBooks. So paycheck printing settings. If we click on this, this is where we can tell QuickBooks how we plan to print our paychecks and pay stubs. So pre-printed QuickBooks compatible voucher check stock or plain paper stubs. You can choose the number of copies right here. And if we want to include the phone number on the pay stub. Next, Form W-2 printing settings. Just basically, are you printing this on 3-part paper, 4-part perforated paper, or plain paper? Email preferences. I really like to point this out because this is where QuickBooks, this is where you can tell QuickBooks to remind you of these payroll deadlines, basically. So payday reminders. So you can get a payday reminder the day you have to run payroll, the day before. Tax payment reminders and form filing reminders. So QuickBooks can email you to make sure that you stay on top of this stuff right here. I'm gonna click OK. Next, group report settings. This is where you can tell QuickBooks which reports you want to be able to export to Excel, like I showed you earlier. So we have employee reports. These are all that we have selected, but we could also choose employee details, tax and wage summary, tax liability, and total pay. But that is such a cool feature. I love that as part of payroll. Next, accounting preferences. This is where you get into, the accounts that are involved with payroll. So we could change anything right here if we wanted to. So bank account, this is the default account that we pay paychecks out of. The wage expense account right here, contribution account, since we contribute to the health plan for our employees, tax expenses, liabilities. So any taxes that are withheld from employee paychecks will be in these accounts. And then other liability accounts, like if we have health insurance plans or retirement plans for our employees, that would be listed down here too. If you want to change any of this, just click Customize. And it changes the look of the window a little bit, really just to include the drop downs and other selections here. So how do you categorize wage expenses? All employees' wages go in the same accounts right here, or we can choose to use different accounts for different groups of employees, or different accounts for different wages. Most companies don't need to break down wages like this, but if you do, this is where you can set that up. Let's see, company contribution expense accounts. Right here, we could assign a different account or choose that we have separate accounts for different employees or different contributions. Tax expense accounts, we could also change that if we wanted to. Again, though, most companies don't need to get so specific with these things right here. If you're not sure if you need to separate this out in a lot of detail, definitely talk to your accountant to be sure you get that set up right. Tax liability accounts right here, and then other liability accounts down here for that health insurance plan. All right, so that's all good. I actually want to go ahead and show you taking care of payroll taxes. There we go. So I'm going to go back to tax. So when you're ready to pay taxes, you're going to click Pay Taxes right here. And you're going to see in the top section here tax payments that are due and upcoming tax payments right here. These are upcoming. We don't have to pay these yet, but I do want to show you what this process kind of looks like. So let's say for the 941, I'm going to click Record Payment. I'm just going to click OK because this is early. Okay, so here's the breakdown of what is part of this payment that is due. We could change the bank account that this is coming out of, set the payment date right here, and that's it. Now, if we were set up to ePay, then the button down here, I believe, would say Send Payment, and it would be taken care of. That's really all there is to it if you have ePay set up. You click that button, it's sent. Since I do not have that set up, I'm instead going to just click record payment. So here is the payment information confirmation. This just means that I have recorded the payment in QuickBooks. I haven't actually sent it since I don't have ePay set up. There is a form that we can print to send in with our tax payment. I'm going to go ahead and skip this for now. But that's it. That's taking care of your payroll taxes. That's how easy it is, just a few clicks. And QuickBooks keeps track of what you owe and all of that. So that's paying the taxes. What about the tax forms that you have to submit? Because that needs to happen as well. So over here to the right on the Payroll Tax Center, we're going to see our forms. So we have quarterly forms, annual forms, and then employee and employer setup forms. I'm going to choose quarterly forms. Okay, so we have our quarterly tax return for our 941. So I'm going to click on this. And right down here, we can view the form. If we click view, then QuickBooks is going to show us the tax form with all of the information filled in based on the payrolls that we have run. So if we had e-file set up, then there would be a send button right here to send in the form through e-file. We don't, so instead we would print off the form and sign it and send it in following the instructions on this page of the form. But again, with e-file, you do it all in QuickBooks. There's nothing to do outside of QuickBooks. Back to the other tax forms that we have, you might have different quarterly forms in here as well. You know, state forms, I just have one form for Texas, but you might have, you know, other forms. I think California has several others that show up in that section. Annual forms, these are going to be things like your W-2 forms that you need to prepare for your employees. So down here, actually right here, the employer copies of the form W-2. You can start that process here. I don't have any payroll information for the last year, so I can't create W-2s, but this is where you do that. It's very easy. Employee setup forms, these are things like direct deposit authorization, employment eligibility verification, withholding allowance certificate, things like that. Employer setup forms are going to include, you know, application for an EIN, which we of course already have, and Texas unemployment registration for me. Again, in different states, you're going to have different selections here. That's taking care of your payroll taxes. So let's talk about non-tax liabilities when it comes to payroll. These are going to be things like your employees' health insurance that you need to pay. So what I want to do, I'm actually going to go over to my chart of accounts right here. And on our chart of accounts, we have an account called payroll liabilities. This is, you know, the parent account for all the liability accounts where QuickBooks keeps track of what we owe for different taxes. So if we look down here, we see federal taxes, federal unemployment, good health insurance. So this is the liability account QuickBooks set up for that good health insurance deduction. And we can see there's $70 sitting in the account right now. So this what actually means that we owe $70 to good health insurance. So we're going to enter a payment for this premium. Now, the important thing to note here, you want to enter an actual transaction in QuickBooks for these non-payroll tax liabilities. If you're paying payroll taxes, go through the Payroll Tax Center 100% of the time. Any other type of liability that relates to payroll, like this insurance premium, if you have, you know, a retirement plan that your employees contribute to, you're just going to enter a regular transaction through the Create menu to record that. Now, which transaction you choose depends on the nature of how you pay this outside of QuickBooks. So if you just pay this online, choose expense. If you actually send in a physical check, choose check. If you receive a bill for the health insurance, enter a bill and then pay it through pay bills. I'm going to enter an expense because I'm going to pay this online. I'm going to pretend that I'm paying this online. And I'm just going to enter the payee here, Good Health Insurance. Click Save. The category, this is the account that should be impacted by this transaction. We're actually going to select that Good Health Insurance liability account, and we're paying $70. $50 of that is from our employee, $20 of that is the company contribution. If we needed to add anything else to this, maybe there were some, let's see. There we go, other business expenses. Maybe there are some admin fees or something. We could add that on as well. But that is recording the payment for the insurance. You have to actually submit this outside of QuickBooks, but we're recording it on an expense form because it's not a payroll tax. I'll just click Save and Close. Then if we look at the liability account, it's at 0 because we have entered that payment. And that is it, really, as far as the payroll cycle. We do have, let me see here, a couple minutes where I can show you some employee or some other payroll stuff like reports and things. So just real quickly, I want to come over to reports. And I'm going to scroll down this reports page. And down here at the bottom, we have a section for payroll reports. There are a ton of payroll reports in QuickBooks. I'm not going to go through every one of these. The name really tells you what you're going to see on the report. But let's say you wanted to look at, payroll details. Just click on that. And this report is going to show us, in one moment, there we go, details for the payroll period that we select right here. So we click this drop down, we can choose the time period that we're looking at. So really useful information that you can get from these payroll reports. I also do want to point out in this group of payroll reports, we have the paycheck list. So you can run the paycheck list report from here if you wanted to. You don't have to do it from that payroll page. There's time activities right here as well, total payroll costs, all of this. But if you need reporting information on payroll, QuickBooks has that for you. There's a report for that. But that is it for today. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for coming to learn about payroll. And hopefully we will see you at an upcoming session. Have a good rest of your day, and we will see you next time.